Something of a diplomatic catastrophe for Israel. We've seen Israeli ambassadors called into foreign ministries in Cairo, Amman, across Europe as well as a result of this operation.
The flotilla's passengers came from all around the world. Among them were parliamentarians, journalists, a Holocaust survivor and a Nobel Peace Laureate. They had with them 10,000 tons of supplies to help alleviate the humanitarian situation in Gaza.
I think what Israel has done is an act of piracy. What Israel has done is a crime. They've attacked ships carrying the flags of other countries like Greece and Turkey while they were in international water.
I think it's clear that under international law, Israel had the right to board the vessel. It was in Israeli military waters. If you look at the San Remo Manual on International Law, neutral vessels on the high sea, when the vessels are believed on reasonable grounds to be carrying contraband or breaching a blockade, they can be searched. And
it's the end of what's been a dramatic, violent and very difficult day here in the shores of Israel and Gaza.
The context is that Gaza has become a base for Hamas terrorists backed by Iran, from which they fired thousands of rockets into Israel. They're amassing thousands more rockets to fire at our cities, at our towns, at our children.
The point is the siege is against international law itself. The United Nations has passed resolutions.
The deaths of 10 activists as Israeli commandos dropped from helicopters and later opened fire has been widely criticised. Dozens were also injured. Israel released its own dramatic pictures of the raid, showing, it says, soldiers under attack.
They chose to use violence. They had stocks of different kinds of sticks, of knives, of metal objects.
Israel's public relations operation has gone into overdrive trying to explain what happened. But there's no doubt that this is a major and tragic international incident.
The raid went very badly wrong, and the diplomatic consequences for Israel are likely to be severe.
Now, the Israelis have maintained they put people aboard with non-lethal weapons and pistols for their own defence. But this man seems to be carrying a suppressed version of the Uzi submachine gun.
Well, Israel is tonight at the centre of a diplomatic storm.
A full and impartial and independent investigation or inquiry into these events.
It is a humanitarian passage to Gaza.
We had discussed a lot about using just our bodies to repel any invasion by the Israelis. At the same time, we had repeatedly called on the Israelis not to attack our ships, not to use violence.
Called upon the organizers and all those who were associated with them through diplomatic channels and any other means we could to stop this provocation.
This action was uncalled for. Israeli actions constitute a grave breach of international law. In simplest terms, this is tantamount to banditry and piracy. It is murder conducted by a state.
Israel was already feeling the diplomatic fallout of the assassination in a Dubai hotel of a Hamas leader. Forged British passports used for the operation. Now, the deadly storming of the aid flotilla is being seen as both a political and PR disaster.
And pressure on Israel to lift its Gaza blockade.
Israeli army pictures have shown how commandos stormed the Turkish ship and ran into resistance from pro-Palestinian activists armed with sticks and knives. But the vital minutes when the troops opened fire have not been released, and most of the potential witnesses are in Israeli detention.
Well, I'm down at the Israeli consulate in Istanbul, and it is completely hemmed in by a large and furious crowd of protesters. And that could be a metaphor now for Israel standing in the region, because this country, Turkey, used to call itself a good friend of Israel's.
What kind of humanitarian activists, some with known terrorist history, embrace Hamas, a terrorist organization that openly shuns a two-state solution and calls for Israel's destruction, defying conditions set by the international community and the Quartet?
How do you feel about President Obama's response?
Well, they've been cautious to date, but I think they have a number of issues here. One is, of course, the deep international outrage.
But the issue is not Hamas's ideology. The issue is the tactic of the Israeli blockade, which is what this flotilla was trying to break, and it's what the European Union just this afternoon described as politically counterproductive and unacceptable. It's your blockade that is at the root of all this.
I understand what you say, but I think that Israel basically, we are not living in Western Europe. We would love to have neighbors like you had on the British Isles or other Western European countries. Unfortunately, we are living in a tough neighborhood.